Hello, everybody, and we are live, and it is the 26th of February, and we have a really important show for you. People are coming in from all over the world. It is not just an important show, it is a very important show, because we are going to be talking about very important people, because today's show is all about VIPs, VIP mobility. So there's a lot to talk about there. There's a lot to talk about how you manage VIPs, what is a VIP, how you use technology to support VIPs, how you use white glove to support VIPs. We're going to be going through VIP technology, VIP services in some considerable detail, and you're going to love the show today. We've also got some really important tax updates and immigration updates for you, and of course, all the breaking news from around the world. So if you're joining us from near or far, it is so great to have you, whatever time zone you are in. So you know how it works, people. Join in the conversation, write in the comments box. I think we've got Katja coming in from San Francisco. We've got Stephanie from Philly. We've got Anthony from California, people coming in from all over the world. And not surprising, because it is such an important subject. We are live right now on LinkedIn. We are live right now on YouTube. And also, if you want to download us as a podcast, we are available on Spotify. So that's all that. But also, I know a lot of you tune in because you do want your CPE codes. You want CPE codes from ERC, you want them from SHRM, you want them from HRCI. So here are the CP codes for those of you who want them, and many thanks to all our good friends at Worldwide ERC for giving us the GMS and the CRP credits. Also, many thanks to our friends at Rocket Mortgage who provided us with the codes for HRCI and for SHRM. I'll leave those up there for a moment or two. Next week, we've got another great show lined up for you. I'm super excited. We have Karen O'Brien from BD, Becton Dixon, as was, and she's going to be talking about how they are redefining global mobility. And trust me, they are doing some really, really cool stuff. So do make sure you watch the show next week, and I think you'll see some pretty cool stuff about what they're doing with their program. And they were starting from the viewpoint that a lot of their assignees were not typically representative of their general population. They got into that about how do you actually make your assignee population more representative of your general population. And that's what we're going to be talking about next week. You will find it a fascinating show, I'm sure. Meanwhile, what has been happening in the wonderful world of global mobility over the last 7 days? Well, let's find out. Let's run the video and see what has been happening in our world over the last 7 days. So there we have it. Lots of people have been promoted, and congratulations to everyone who's been promoted. Lots of you got new jobs, and congratulations to all of those who've got new jobs. But for those of you who are looking, there's lots of new jobs out there. So good luck with your job hunt. If we can help you in any way, just reach out to us. If you've got a job that you want to announce to the public, let us know. We will make sure we promote it for you. If you've had a promotion or you've got a new job that you want to again, tell the world about, then again, let us know. And congratulations to all our new change makers, loads of new change makers this week. And if you would like to be a change maker, then again, reach out to us and we'll see what we can do. So that's all that. We're now going to move on to talk about immigration, and who better to give us our weekly immigration update than the wonderful Julia Onslow-Cole. So you know how it works, everybody. Hit the heart button, hit the like button, hit the applause button, and let's welcome to our stage Julia Onslow-Cole. Hi, Julia.
Brian.
Hi, and where in the world are you today?
I'm in Doha, in Qatar.
Cool. Okay, so I'll give you your time. Go for it. Give us this week's immigration update.
Brilliant. Well, I was going to talk, Brian, about the Middle East because I came into Doha a couple of days ago, and before that I was in Riyadh, and before that in UAE. So I was just going to give some highlights from the region. But I also just wanted to mention that, you know, we did a big Fragment client event this morning in Doha, and we're just talking about, you know, the war for talent. And it's quite interesting that I woke up this morning to the news about the EB-5 visa in the US. So President Trump and the new US
wealthy investors.
Yes, the investment visa. So the US administration were talking about, you know, modifying or maybe rescinding the EB-5 scheme and then replacing it with a visa for, you know, wealthy investors. I think they're talking about 5 million US dollars. So it's quite interesting just to see how everybody in the world is just sort of slightly shifting to attract talent. Obviously, there is this big worry about trade, the economy. And so, you know, this is a global phenomena. So I've got 2 things to tell you about Saudi, 4 things to tell you about the UAE, and 3 things to tell you about Qatar. So Saudi, my 2 things to tell you about Saudi is that they have increased Saudiization for certain roles in the private sector. So, you know, Saudi is very, very focused, and quite rightly, on making sure there's opportunities for Saudi citizens in the private sector, and to make sure that they're filling that unemployment gap for Saudi citizens. We've already talked about, for example, in HR, everyone has to be a Saudi national. Now in accounting, dentistry, engineering, and pharmacy, they've actually upped the levels. So, you know, and you really have to comply with this. Non-compliance will lead to penalties, including suspension of employee transfers and even work permit renewals. So that's my first thing on Saudi. My second is there's been some really positive amendments from Saudi employment law. And for example, one of the really positive things is that all female employees can now take up to 12 weeks of maternity leave. So that's a lot more than before. And that will apply to expats who are employed by Saudi companies in Saudi. And there's some more sort of good exemptions if you have a death in the family, for example, and time off. So those are my 2 Saudi things. 4 things in the UAE. The first is that very positive development on the implementation of a short-term work authorization category in certain free zones, and Fragment has been working very hard in relation to that. So that's very good for clients. The second thing is that due to the prevailing geopolitical situation, for certain nationalities, they're continuing to experience a lot of security issues. So there's delays in bringing them into the UAE. The third thing is that after a period of great leniency, the authorities in Abu Dhabi are really clamping down. If you are working for a company in Abu Dhabi, they'll expect to see your tenancy agreement as part of the renewal process, showing that you live in Abu Dhabi. Lots of clients actually live in Dubai and they commute, and there was a lot of leniency around it, but now, you know, they're really clamping down. So that's something to really hone in on. And the last thing I want to say is that the golden visa is expanding, and Abu Dhabi has expanded it to those that have super yachts and also those who are influencers on social media. And I think this is really great, and it's a good example of how governments are being really innovative with different categories and really tailoring to modern needs.
That's the first time I've heard of an influencer visa.
Yeah, yeah. So the three things about Qatar. Breaking news, the Ministry of Labour announced an amnesty for 3 months for those in Qatar that's overstayed their visas. The second thing is that nationalisation laws are due to come into force in April. So they're similar like to Saudiization in Saudi or Emiratization in the UAE. And there's a lot of discussion about it. The regulations haven't been produced yet. And the last thing to say is that in the QFC, which is a leading free zone in Qatar, there's a drop in the corporate registration fee. It's actually gone from 5,000 right down to 500 USD, and most other zones in the mainland are following. So that's really good for companies that are setting up in Qatar.
That's amazing. You got so much in such a short period of time. How you do it is incredible, Julia. We are honored to have you as our immigration guru. And we are equally honored, of course, to have Julie Barron as our tax guru. So we're now going to move on. We're going to have Julie Barron's tax update. So everybody, you know how it works. As we say goodbye to Julia and welcome to Julie, hit the heart button, hit the like button, and hit the applause button as we welcome onto our stage, Julie Barron. Hi, Julie. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well, Brian. How are you?
Good. Okay, so what are you going to talk to us about today?
Well, today I was going to focus on Asia. So I've got a couple updates from a couple countries in Asia, but I'm also going to give a little update on the U.S., just like Julia, throw in a little U.S. news because there was a vote in the House last night.
There's a lot of news going on, yeah.
We've got a lot of news every day. Every day is a new news day. So first, I'm going to go to India, where they have this new personal tax regime, where basically India residents can choose which tax regime they want to be taxed under, the old regime or the new regime. And there was an announcement at the beginning of February with some more simplifications to the new tax regime. So the new tax regime has only 3 rate bands, so less rate bands. So more of your income is taxed at a higher level, but a bigger standard deduction and bigger tax credits, but the opportunity to use very few of other deductions. So when you file your tax return and you have to tell your employer ahead of time how you're going to file, you elect which tax regime you're going to be taxed under, which I find fascinating that you can kind of choose, hey, which one's better for me? And I'm going to choose that tax regime. So I found that very interesting when I was doing my research on India taxes. And then you can choose either to take the standard deduction or a standard rebate, which is either a reduction of your taxable income or simply a reduction of your tax. So lots of choices going on in India for kind of your middle class people, so they can get to a better tax answer for themselves. So not many countries where you get to choose your tax regime.
No,
So,
you go for the one that's lowest.
Exactly. You just go for the one that's lowest, but you have to figure out, in your personal situation, what does that mean for you? But I find it very interesting.
Cool.
Anyway, on to Malaysia. In Malaysia, they made a couple announcements at the beginning of February as well. So the first one is now there will be a new mandatory employee provident fund contribution for foreign workers. So 2% of wages have to go into a fund, which is, again, the employee provident fund. And foreigners will now be subject to that as well. And that applies to both employees and employers. They have to pass some tax laws, and there needs to be some more detail to come on that. But just wanted to make employers aware that if you've got anyone in Malaysia they will now be subject to this 2% contribution there. The other one is that they have introduced an electronic system. So people who are depositing tax withholding in Malaysia need to now use this system as of February. So your January withholding needs to all run through this new electronic system instead of the old system. So very interesting. You can point tax agents to help you with that. So yeah, very interesting, but they're getting more high tech, which is always good. And then on to the US, which is, I'm going to add a little update in there. So late last night, I was, trying to watch C-SPAN and watch the vote. But so the House voted for the budget resolution that tells the House Ways and Means Committee to basically start on the tax process. And I think it's been deemed one big beautiful bill. So the one big beautiful bill in the House.
Point of view, of course, yeah.
What was that?
Depending on your point of view.
Depending on your point of view, this is the term they've used, right? One big beautiful bill instead of two separate bills for the budget. It does allow for tax cuts of $4.5 trillion over 10 years. Part of that is that they are telling Congress that they need to make cuts in other areas. So they have to cut federal spending by a certain amount to allow for this $4.5 trillion of tax cuts. So in the Senate, of course, so we've got the House and we've got the Senate. The Senate was going to choose the two-bill route, where they were basically doing a skinnier budget focused on more defense spending, energy production, other things, but not so much on taxes. So we will have to see what happens next, but we've got the two bills in the Senate and one bill in the House. They have to both, in order to go through this budget resolution process, which allows them to vote something into law without the 60 votes in the Senate, you only have to have a majority. Both pieces of the legislature have to have a same bill. So they will have to now work it out between them and come up with the same bill that will then be voted on by both chambers and then passed on to the next step. So interesting stuff. I didn't know if they would have the votes yesterday evening, but we got the votes and they passed it through. So interesting things. But they will have to figure out some ways to raise revenue if they're going to get through $4.5 trillion of tax cuts. So more to come on that.
That's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money, yes.
There's a trillion here, a trillion there. Yeah. Pretty soon you're talking serious money. So I think obviously you'll come back to us as and when those tax cuts actually come in, those tax changes come in to update them. But we are talking about, remarkable levels of change happening at the moment. Julie, thank you so much for that update. We're now going to move on, and we've got a quick Benivo update, and then we're going to be talking about VIPs. So everybody, you know how it works. Let's do a big thank you to Julie Barron for her update. As Rob said, there passed by 2 votes. So there we have it. So we'll move on. We'll say goodbye to Julie and welcome onto our stage Benivo's very own Beth Neilson. Hey Beth, how you doing?
Hello Brian, it's lovely to see you. I'm doing really well, thank you.
Okay, so what's news?
Well, this week in the news, we've got an event happening next Monday. Really busy week for us at Benivo next week. On the 3rd of March, then Monday the 3rd of March, you can join our very own CEO, Nitsan Udan, who is doing an ERC webinar supporting talent mobility in times of crisis. I think Tali's going to put the link there so you can sign up. That sounds going to be really exciting, and I hope loads of people attend.
Important subject, and we always love a good ERC event.
We do. And we're continuing to support next week. So because we're also doing FEM next week. So Amsterdam FEM, I'm going to be presenting along with my amazing colleague Tina and a couple of our fantastic clients on Friday at the event itself. But the night before, we're doing a corporate-only social event, which we'd love for people to come along to. So please do sign up. Again, I think Tali's going to be sharing some of those links, and we'd love to see you. If you'd like to have a one-on-one meeting, I've got a couple of slots that I can move around if people would like to speak to me separately, and I would really welcome that.
Cool. I'm
Moving on.
I'm loving the link. I can see this with Benivo. Benivo, high wine, great conversation. That sounds
exactly. That's what we promised. I will do. In addition, some of you might know that we've got a mobility survey going on, which is on the US domestic outbound home sale assistance. So again, a corporate only benchmark that's still open. So please do participate, get in touch if you'd like to be one of the first people to get a copy of the report, and obviously to influence and get a benchmark your policies against that survey. We've also got a corporate only webinar following today's session. So today we're going to be speaking about our VIP program. If you'd like to know more after today, then please do, Tally's going to put a link about it, but also to register for our corporate only webinar that's happening on the 25th of March, where we have recently been doing a survey, and we're going to be presenting some of the findings of that survey, as well as diving a bit deeper into some of the topics that we're going to talk about today. So loads going on, really excited.
Okay, well, that's great. We're now going to move on to talk about VIP relocation. Now, you're staying with us, and we're also bringing on Chris Hughes from Benivo. So everybody, you know how it works. We're getting on to the big subject about VIP relocation. So hit the heart button, hit the like button, hit the applause button as we are joined. Beth is joined on stage by Chris Hughes from Benivo. Hi, now I know this is a subject where people are going to have loads of views and comments. So out there in our audience, if you've got comments on VIPs, then please join the debate right in the comments box. So let's start off. Beth, you've been on the stage just now, and you've been on the stage with us here a few times. But for those people who don't know, tell us about your role at Benivo.
Yeah, so here at Benivo, I've been with Benivo for over 3.5 years now. It has gone so quickly, but I work now in client development. But my background, as some of you may know, I started in tax at the Big Four, and I've also worked for some GM tech companies. But the reason I'm on today's show is because of my role as a director of client services at a relocation management company, which I did just prior to joining Benivo. So really familiar with those VIP stories, which I'm really hoping people are going to share, because everybody has a story. Generally, I've been in mobility for over 18 years now, seen lots of change, but the need to support VIPs has remained really a hot topic and really consistent. So happy to be here today to discuss that.
And great to see you. And as we just put there, if you've got funny stories or other sorts of stories, important stories, sad stories, but hopefully funny stories about VIPs, then share them in the comments on LinkedIn, and we'll try and pick up on your stories. Chris, so tell us about yourself. This is your first time on The View from the Top, so many thanks for joining us. But tell us a bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I've been at Benivo about 1 year. I think it'll be 1 year next week. Previously, I was working at a reasonable sized RMC, working as a consultant and a senior consultant, sort of managing those VIP moves as well. Before moving to Benivo. At Benivo, I'm working in the program delivery team, which is kind of more of a holistic overview of, the programs that we manage at Benivo, looking and ensuring that their success, and looking and making sure we're hitting the key metrics and managing those from our side.
Okay, well, certainly you'll have lots of experience and stories that we'll get into as we go through. But let's just start off by just making sure we understand a bit about what we're talking about. And I'll start with you, Beth. What makes VIP relocations so high stake in global mobility?
Well, I think the comment that people often use is, who is a VIP? It's someone who can get you fired. So it's high stake because it's super visible.
I love that. I love that, actually. Okay, so let's just take that comment. A VIP is the person that can get you fired. So it's like your boss's boss's boss quite often. It's like your grand boss. Yeah.
Exactly, and as we've seen, Bindu just put a comment there. The RMC consultants are almost always in panic mode when it's a VIP because it is so high stakes, and that hasn't changed. The somebody who is flagged by the company as being important because they need specialist support or because they are just so high profile is really what defines the VIP. And the background has therefore always been a huge amount of focus on getting it right for that population.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, VIPs, well, it's stating the obvious, isn't it? Really, that a VIP is very important. That's why they're called VIPs. We get that, but so let's understand, Chris, bringing you into the conversation here, is we understand why they are high stake. I mean, they are reputationally important. They're also incredibly important for the business. That they're the ones where if it doesn't work, the business can really suffer. But from your point of view, how have VIPs typically been handled? Just tell us about what is the traditional white glove model.
I mean, from a traditional RMC point, obviously you're looking at maybe the SPOC model, the single point of contact. But I think just generally, it's always very manual. That's the way that a lot of RMCs managed it before. It's just manually interacting with all of the vendors on behalf of the specific VIP, ensuring that nothing goes wrong, but also then manually updating the mobility team to make sure that they're always aware. Because I think when it comes to a VIP, you've got to look at it two ways. You always have to look at how you manage that specific employee, but also how you then handle the communication with the mobility team, because they also want that full, transparency, that full visibility to know what's going on at all those points of time.
Yeah, I get that. I'm just looking at some of the comments here that we've come in. So I'll just pick up some of these from Harvey. For a VIP move to India, I was asked to source housing, which would be as near a lake as the assignment was moving from Switzerland, and that everyone engaged in the move was insisting on the same. So there was a move, they had to have a lake, and then Bindu's put, one of my German clients asked for a horse for his wife even before she moved in. And then Tara put, yes, VIP cases can also cause, this is interesting, entire changes in policy coming from the tax world around compliance. A non-compliant VIP can create a big issue for the company and result in kicking a company out of a country. Beth, do you want to just take that point?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point from Tara. So we know that everybody has unique needs and deserves that personalized relocation. But VIPs do have distinct needs because of the huge business impact that top tier talent can have. So they do require that specialized handling, because if it goes wrong, if you break confidentiality, if you don't provide them with a seamless experience, if they cannot do their job as quickly as possible when they land in the new location, then there is a huge business impact of doing so. So that could be, from a tax perspective, if things aren't filed appropriately, if they're not given the right information, if they haven't sorted out their bank accounts efficiently, so that all their dividends, or they're not aware of their stock advice. There are huge implications, financial for the individual, but also for the company. So I think that is an excellent point to add. It is not just an individual. Sorry, I sound so fervent about this. It's not just the individual being annoying. I think sometimes it can be perceived that, this VIP is really senior. They're the CEO or they're the CPO of the company. Therefore, they deserve to be treated better. I don't think it's that. In my experience, a VIP is not someone who's insisting on a better service because they feel that they're an important person. It's all about if they are not productive, their impact of not being productive has a much larger impact on the company and the company's success than a different employee would. And I think that's the way that I like to think about it. I know when we were chatting, preparing for today's show, we would probably agree that our CEO, Nitzan, is a very important person, but I don't think he would expect better treatment because of who he is and his seniority. It's more about the impact that his loss of productivity would have to the company, which is why he should be treated as a VIP.
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting question about what is a VIP. Chris, in your view, what is a VIP?
Well, I think what Beth sort of summed up there is quite clear. For me, a VIP is someone who's not necessarily on the title, but someone that the business considers an important person. So them conducting their role is important to the business, and therefore that would make them a VIP. Now, that's, again, not necessarily on the title. It could be just on a unique talent that they specifically have that the business requires. It also could be on a specific, requirement that they have. If they want to move, but there's a quite high profile case. So I think it can vary, but it's just that it's important to the business really in how they perform and how they can hit the ground running, especially when it's a global relocation.
Yeah, another thing I often add into that is these are people that are time poor. So anything that can be done to protect their time is really important. So we often, and I know we're going to go into this more, but talking about proxies, talking about pre-scanned housing and pre-defined DSP services is just really important to make sure that the minimal amount of time is spent by those individuals prior to, so that they can work as quickly as possible.
Yeah, and I know we're going to get into this, but I mean, many people obviously get a lot of support from tech, but actually they need to get support from tech and the white glove. So Tara has put here, true, Beth, not just loss of impact, but level of exposure to authorities. Plus, usually their compensation is at a level the financial issues are expanded compared to another relocation. And another point I'd make is that sometimes a VIP move is actually confidential, that you can't disclose. I mean, Chris, I don't know if you want to come into that, but sometimes you're going to cases where you're dealing with somebody where you can't actually disclose who they are to the various people you're dealing with, housing and shipping and what have you.
Yeah, I mean, as we were discussing previously, if you're moving someone who's C-suite in a publicly listed company, obviously those things need to be announced, and actually they can have an effect potentially on share price, going into, extreme details there. But, these moves are often happening in the background before these announcements. Often people, if they're moving from a previous company, they may have a period of gardening leave so therefore actually some form of confidentiality or, that is not known to the wider company or the wider world is really key. So having those barriers in place is really crucial when you're talking about a VIP relocation.
I think it's key to come in there and say that these. Sorry.
No, you go ahead.
I was going to say that individuals probably don't also have peers that they can talk to about these things, because maybe if it is confidential, they can't tell anyone. So it's really hard for them to get information in the way that maybe other employees would. And as Harvey has said, I don't think it's these individuals thinking that they're important themselves, and we do sometimes create an aura around them. But it is the fact that these individuals will have an impact if something goes wrong, and they have to be treated as such.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I know I did a survey on LinkedIn, and somebody, actually, I'll name him because it was public and he's a good friend, was Pat Jurgens, said that in one of his former employers, they had two ways of flagging people on their system. One was a VIP, and the other was what they called a PITA, P-I-T-A. And he said you can work out yourself what PITA stands for, but I think it's pain in the something or other. So they actually flagged people both ways, which I found very, very amusing. But we're going to be talking about the VIPs. And one question I want to ask the audience actually is typically, what proportion of moves that you deal with would you say fall within that VIP category? And I'll give you a couple of choices. You can either say none, or you can say 5 to 10%, 10 to 25%, or indeed over 25%, or indeed you can put in any other number you want. But what proportion of moves that you see would you say are VIP? So, I mean, Chris, from your perspective, generally in the market, what would you say? What is the typical proportion of moves that actually fall within that, the official VIP category, the ones that have to have that special level of service?
For me, I'd say it's between the 5 and 10% really of total moves across a program. And actually, even within that, you can drill it down into maybe different categories of VIPs. There might be, let's say, 7, 10% of people that would be considered a VIP. And then there may be only like a 2 or 3% where they would consider them true VIPs, where actually it's not just that they need to be flagged as an important person, but actually the benefits are going to drastically change potentially. So yeah, 5 to 10% is what we would see typically.
And then when we were preparing for today's show, I think there was also a conversation around, it depends on where the company is in their development cycle. So it's probably going to be a lot higher if it's a more established company, if it's an earlier company, because there's going to be more of your percentage of your workforce who are more senior, your C-suites and your founders and other people going out to found new locations. I would say for very large multinational corporations, it is much lower. Maybe it's just the top 1%. But you know, the amount of time that's spent on them is probably a lot higher than 1% of everyone's time.
Okay, I'm going to move the conversation on because there's so much to talk about. I'm going to start drilling down. But first question I'm going to ask you, Beth, is let's look at it from the VIP's perspective. So let's, you know, the moment we're looking at it from the company's perspective, let's look at it from the VIP's perspective. What percentage, what are some of the key expectations that VIPs have when they are relocating? So what are they looking at?
Well, I think for a VIP, it depends on if they've moved before. But often if they are senior, they might have a family and they might have other responsibilities that they need to take into consideration. So I think it's being treated as an individual and or have all of their needs anticipated and their questions answered and information available when they need it. Because again, we're talking about time poor people rather than difficult people. And if you can be preemptive and experienced and guide them through the process, that is exactly what they want, because just make it as easy as possible for them to relocate, whatever their personal circumstances might be. Okay,
and Chris, from your perspective, what are the sort of examples of the actual pain points that you've seen frequently? I mean, let's not take, you know, the weird and wonderful stories, but the more common, what are the pain points that you see when you're relocating a VIP?
I mean, from the VIP perspective, it's kind of, as what Beth was saying, you know, it's all about that time, you know, whereas maybe the idea is to over treat someone, you know, talk to them about every single thing. These people are really limited time, you know, they're time poor, and therefore actually it's about streamlining that communication. You know, a typical global relocation, you may have 6, 7, 8 vendors, you know, or 8 different people who are communicating with any assignee or any VIP at any particular point. It's about ensuring that no one is asking things twice. No one is asking for calls where someone sits there for 25 minutes and they don't get anything from it. It's about really just making sure that that VIP is using the time that they have taken out of what is always a very busy day when they're working, and using it productively. And actually that's where the relocation consultants will come in to kind of manage that process and ensure it's only the key points are getting to that VIP. I don't find VIPs particularly demanding in the presentation of how they're discussed, how they're talked to. It's about the fluff. They don't want it really. That's from my experience. It's just about making sure that it's pure facts to the point, and it's progressing the relocation in a fast way.
Okay, and this is where I want to get into the sort of the Benivo approach, because sometimes the white glove approach may actually backfire. Because I mean, what you're saying, Chris, is the white glove approach is can be a very manual approach. But if you've got somebody who's incredibly time poor, probably the last thing they want to do is to shoot off an email or speak on the phone to a consultant who may not be in the same time zone, who may not respond immediately, and you know, there might be, you know, delays and frustrations building in. They should be allowed to do that, clearly, but also they should be allowed to have the same tech access that everybody else has. And so, Beth, I want you to talk a little bit about the Benivo approach to VIP relocation, and how does the structure that we do for VIP services different from a traditional approach?
Yeah, so I think it's really worth pointing out that Benivo can deliver a traditional RMC approach where everything goes through email, hand-holding, personalized conversations, providing information maybe through a proxy, so the EA or the partner, the spouse, to make sure that, you know, the information is done, that they are getting the white glove service that they would traditionally expect. And that goes all the way from obviously our very experienced relocation consultants that would be allocated, all the way through to the vendors that offer the VIP services and the white glove services, so that the chauffeurs, the different cars, the different housing options, the different people being there when you pack and unload. So there's loads of traditional things that we would expect would be delivered like any relocation management company, and Benivo can certainly do that. I think where we are different is that we also give the technology support so that everything is available instantaneously. And I think that's the huge difference, and also meeting the need of today's VIP populations. Not everybody who's moving has the same profile as people that were moving when I started my career 18 odd years ago. People are much more tech savvy now, and have very different expectations in how and when they will be provided with information.
Yeah, I mean, I find that so frustrating sometimes that people sort of assume that because somebody is a VIP, they don't want a tech solution, whereas actually what they want is both. And one of the ways I've been putting out in conversations is that it used to be an or discussion. Should we have either a white glove solution or should we have a tech solution? Whereas actually we need to change that paradigm, and it's an and discussion. We need to provide a solution that is white glove and tech based. So tell us, Chris, how does that work in practice? What is the model that the Benivo has developed there?
So in terms of Benivo, what we're obviously offering is the relocation consultant, that dedicated consultant for the specific VIP. They will be doing single point of contact, so really shielding them from a lot of the conversation to make sure that only, as we discussed, they're getting the key points, but also having that full tech platform. So you can go on, manage your move almost as a self-service. You can monitor your trackers. You have everything at the touch of your fingertips. You don't need to contact your specific consultant to get the information that you need. You can also access it yourself. I think also in terms of white glove for the vendors, we have that so that they're able, and obviously they're there to deliver that excellent service, but also white glove can also mean, I think, a little bit about their adaptability. So having vendors who are able to react to different scenarios, because I think one of the things that to talk about VIPs is it's not necessarily they're difficult, but maybe there's some more unusual requests. And that's why you need the white glove service, I think, to be able to react to those. And that's what we're offering at Benivo, the white glove service, the dedicated consultant, but also that tech solution that if they don't have maybe that difficult request, they can really just work through their, they can look at their live trackers, they can look at their dashboards and really manage their move exactly as they would like at their own time, rather than have to try to make time with the consultant whenever, as you say, a lot of people travel as well, VIPs, just because they may be moving from the US to Europe doesn't always mean they're going to be in the US time zone at the point of their move. So having that ability to log in at any stage is really useful as well.
I mean, that's a great point. So, because if you're moving, say, a CEO or CFO of some major company, and they're moving, say, from the US to Europe, they may actually be in Asia at some point during the move, and they still want to make contact. So they will want, genuine live responses to their issues. Now, as I understand our model, and I asked you to talk about it a bit more, Chris, is that aside from the white glove, there is a centralized level of support as well, which improves the overall VIP relocation package.
Yes. So, I mean, in terms of Benivo, obviously we've got that dedicated consultant who's working seamlessly with Benivo. And then you obviously have the internal Benivo teams as well. So you have the program delivery team, which will be taking a overview look at that specific program and those specific employees, as well as the actual customer success manager, the client success manager as well, really to ensure that we're covering all bases. Because I think we've hammered this point, VIPs are not more difficult necessarily, but they are more visible, and therefore we just want to make sure that there is no issues, and that's why we have extra sort of levels built in within the consultants and Benivo to really just manage all those moves and preempt a potential issue, or not issue, but timing potential problem with their relocation as well.
So
and
Beth,
I want to jump in there and talk about how amazing our program and unique the program delivery team is at Benivo. So people might not be familiar with that phrase, so just worth spending a couple of seconds discussing that. So the program delivery team means that our clients, are the relocation consultants, the client success managers are not having to independently monitor those relocation consultant timelines, SLAs, vendors. It is a whole team that is dedicated to keeping that relocation on track using data. And it is game changing. We've had clients who, because of their VIPs or because of certain location specific preferences, have wanted to use a certain vendor. Absolutely fine. We'll bring those on board as a Benivo vendor. And actually, we've seen improvements in the use of those vendors, so the efficiency, the cost, the service delivery, SLA metrics, because they are being monitored, because there is these metrics that are completely transparent, and that feeds through to the VIP. So if there's a vendor you like to use as a VIP, and we know that there are certain preferences for certain companies, absolutely fine, but go through the Benivo platform so things are monitored. You have immediate access to those communications, metrics, what's happened when, where is it in the process. Everybody has the same information, so you're not the last to know. And I think that is a huge game changer in the world of VIPs, especially if you've been previously using manual updates. And great that you told the relocation company, but how does everyone else know?
This is so cool. So this is all about flexibility and agility. So just let's drill into that a bit. So you're a company, you've got a VIP population. How flexible can the solution be in terms of providing the right relocation consultant for that VIP? And how does that work? Beth, you want to come in on that?
Yeah, sure. So we've got relocation consultants who, and we always monitor how many years of experience have they got within the relocation management world. And we can then pair the right relocation consultant with that employee. And that can, as Chris said, be the single point of contact, but also because everything is going through the platform, we also are able to make sure that people are aware and another consultant can take over and provide guidance if necessary, as well as everything being on the site. So a lot of the questions being available. And obviously with Benivo being a tech solution, we also have a separate platform for the partner or spouse, so they can get that support as well.
That's cool. That's cool. That's worth emphasizing. So there's actually a separate platform for the partner or spouse as well.
Yeah, and then obviously the proxy rights. So the ability for a proxy to go in and support the management of that relocation as well. So if the EA or whoever the proxy designated is for that VIP needs some information, because it is all about accessibility of information. They don't want more information than anyone else, but if they need it now. And so it's fantastic that the solution is so supporting this VIP experience.
Okay, so Chris, I mean, can you just walk us through how the system helps track and control the VIP relocation, both in terms of timing and also in terms of managing the costs as well? I think that's an important area as well, because costs by definition are very high with the VIP move.
No, I agree. And I think that's really where Benivo stands out is, it's the platform is there for the employee, but we have the exact same, the exact same access for all of the mobility team. So I think as we were touching on, let's say on the communication side, previously at an RMC, they were waiting for daily updates. We would still be able to do that if that's what the mobility team require, but also they can also log in, see there's the ticketing system controls all the communication. So that's always there for them so they can monitor it as well if needed. There's also the trackers, as I said, the live dashboards. So therefore, the mobility team, if they can see everything happening in real time, and therefore they do not. There's the chance of them being surprised by an email from the VIP to maybe their boss or them saying what's going on here. They would already know because they've already, they're logged into the platform and they have actually seen what is going on and they know exactly in real time. In terms of the costs, again, it's the exact same way of that. You can track in real time the cost of how the move is going. Obviously, I know that it's been discussed on this show previously, how we're running the cost estimates and everything in great detail so that you would be able to estimate them accurately anyway, but also throughout the relocation, so far we've had 3 months of temporary accommodation booking. I can see how much this has already cost. I can already see the quote for the household goods move, and therefore nothing's going to come as a surprise for that specific mobility. That mobility employee. Is there for them at all stages to be able to track and add up. And generally with VIPs, I don't think costs are always the first thing that they think of, but it is the sort of case of you don't want to know at the end, this is how much it's cost. We want to see throughout the process, okay, this is where we're at. And it is there in real time for any employee to, for any mobility person to look at for each employee. And that's not just for VIPs, that's for all employees as well. So I think one of the things we wanted to sort of say is at Benivo, we're talking about VIP today. We want to give every employee the VIP, process. I think we're just sort of talking about the extra stuff that maybe happens for a specific VIP employee for that particular
client. I think you touched on a really important point there. You were talking about the sort of no surprises. Now, people sometimes do like surprises if it's a birthday party that's being thrown for them. But as a general rule, in business, surprises are normally a bad thing. You don't like surprises. And what you don't want to have is when you're moving somebody, you can have quite a complex supply chain, is finding out that something has happened down the supply chain, maybe with, accommodation or something, or pet transfer or something. And you only find out when the VIP complains to the CEO or your boss's boss. And then all of a sudden, all the sort of stuff sort of pootles down and lands on your head because you should have known, but actually you didn't know. But actually, somebody did know in the organization or in the supply chain. Somebody did know that something was that was an issue, and somehow it didn't get through to you. So Beth, explain how our technology allows the mobility consultant to know what is going on down the supply chain, and maybe even by using things like sentiment analysis to maybe understand that things maybe are not going quite right even before anybody else does. So tell us a bit about how the tech can help all this.
Yeah, before I go into that, I did want to say that the information is not accessible to everybody. We do have confidential tags and role-based security access. So there's, that's taken as a given. When it comes to that sentiment analysis, it's one of the things that I absolutely love demoing to prospective clients, and I know that our clients adore. And it's because any information that goes through the platform, any verbal communication, so written communication, can be analysed for sentiment. So is that employee getting frustrated? Are they already showing signs that something's off? And you can pick up on that, report on it, flag it. And when it's a VIP, obviously knowing about that information, knowing there's a problem or a potential problem before it becomes a problem means you can solve it. And then it saves everybody time and hopefully costs as well. So something really exciting you can only do because there's technology.
Absolutely. And there's a question that's come in here. I'll just want this one to you, Beth, from Lauren. She says, does the platform have an API/data feed into the corporate's internal systems in case they don't log on to the Benivo platform and prefer to use their own?
We have an API. We do lots of APIs with vendors and internal HRIS, normally for initiations. And there's different ways of employees getting updates, so they don't have to log in. So that is completely normal that an employee might choose not to log in. This is an and conversation, not an or conversation. I haven't had a request yet that information is pushed into a different system. It tends to be, as we've discussed, pushed as a notification or an alert, or that they have a proxy monitoring that information and their relocation consultant. So I'd love to know more about that use case, but not something I've come across.
Okay, and I'm going to continue on this question of the sentiment analysis, because you did mention it. I think this is actually the coolest technology of 2025. I know there's GPT, which is amazing, all that sort of stuff. But what sentiment analysis does is imagine it as reading your emails before you do, and actually telling you what was the tone of the email or the conversation or whatever. So you can then see what's going down your supply chain without having to read everything, but just by seeing actually, was it color-coded green or was it color-coded red, green being happy, red being unhappy, or amber or whatever. And you can actually see the tone of stuff. I mean, and then you can use it to analyze out. It is so cool. And that's part of the future. But let's just carry on with that. Where do we see this going? What else are we going to see coming forward in the future of VIP relocation? Chris, do you want to kick off and then Beth join in?
Yeah, so I mean, in terms of what we've got at Benivo, just to talk about the sentiment analysis, we also got the automated call logging, which will then bring forward exactly what was discussed in the call. So that's really hitting on that transparency for everyone to see. And then the sentiment analysis can actually be run on those call logs, so we can really instantly see how that call actually went. An instantaneous, as you said, Brian, was it green? It was a positive call. Was it amber or was it red? And that way, it really brings all of the technology that we're bringing in the next 12 months together to just improve everything and make everything instantaneous for the specific VIP and for the employee experience as well. I'll leave it to Beth to talk more about the VIP trends, because I know she's on the forefront of that.
Well, I thank you for that. I love speaking with prospective clients, and anyone who's had recent calls with me knows that I'm also really openly adopting AI, transcribing calls, using it for notes, using it to make sure that no questions are missed. I do think it's the way forward. It's absolutely transformative in the way that we work. But also just to hit on VIP trends, these are bright people, and I think the way that VIPs are looking is also changing demographic. So sorry to hit on the men, but it used to be quite a certain demographic of white men that were the traditional VIPs, the traditional assignments, and that's not the case anymore. We have really interesting, diverse populations relocating who are all tech savvy. So especially from these tech companies, they're expecting things on a timescale like never before, and they are not wanting necessarily to have their hand held. They just want the right information now. And we've got to evolve our VIP services to meet those needs, as well as the traditional moves as well. So it's again this and conversation and being flexible to the evolving needs of the populations that we're supporting.
Okay, and Beth, we start wrapping up here. Just tell us about what's happening in the future in terms of. I know you mentioned earlier a webinar. Just tell us a bit about that.
So, yeah, at the end of March, I'm really thrilled that we're going to be doing a webinar, and it's going to be Chris, myself, but also our colleague Ross, who's been compiling and holding loads of different meetings with fantastic corporates that have taken part. And we're going to be then looking at those results, helping people to benchmark against those results, and answering any questions that you may have about your specific population, your vendors. How would this look, and how would this integrate with your populations? So it's really exciting. It is the future. We know that all companies have a poor percentage of your population who are VIPs and need to have these diverse and flexible approaches. And we want to talk to you about how that's going to work using Benivo, but also what everyone else is doing and how they are evolving their VIP programs to meet this new expectation and new needs.
Okay,
so
and
come along and sign up.
I'll leave the final thought with you, Chris, in our last sort of 30 seconds or so. Final thoughts. Why should companies rethink how they manage their VIP relocations?
I think, just to build on what everyone said, it's just that the changing landscape of how VIPs, expect to be treated. And therefore, what you really want is an agile company. And I think that's what we're looking at doing here in Benivo, is having that agility to deliver the VIP service how the VIP wants it to be delivered. Not every person wants it the exact same, and therefore being able to do that exactly how they would want is delivering a true VIP service.
Okay, great. That's just amazing. I'm going to bring our wonderful tax expert back on. Our equally wonderful immigration expert had to leave to go to another call. And of course, our wonderful producer, Tally, on. So that's it for this week. We are back next week when we're going to be talking about global mobility at BD with the wonderful Karen O'Brien. And trust me, you do not want to miss that show, because they are doing some super, super cool stuff with their program. We're so honored that they are willing to and sharing that with us. live on air next week. So we're going to be talking about how they are redefining global mobility. Fascinating conversation next week. My name is Brian Friedman. This has been The View from the Top. We are out of time. We hope you enjoyed the show. We are back again this time next week. Take care, everybody, and have a great week.